In science news that makes you want to stare at a wall for a few hours, brain organoids, yes, the tiny human brains you can grow from stem cells, grow better in the presence of a human heartbeat. Yes, brain organoids, the tiny, adorable, miniature versions of the human brain. And it's important to note that they don't normally have any kind of sensory input unless you give them sensory input. Yes, those are eyes, and they can occasionally grow eyes under the right conditions. They do sense light under those circumstances because eyeballs are part of your nervous system. Now, if you want to give them sensory input, you would have to attach another organoid to them, like a spinal organoid. Or in the case of when they're used for computation, they give them electric shocks, and those are symbolic of something that they would encounter in the virtual world. But researchers hypothesize that the presence of a heartbeat would improve their development, and it seems to be the case. Now, some important notes. This is a preprint, but it is coming out of a well respected lab in Germany. One of the issues with brain organoids is that they still remain fairly small, just a few millimeters across, and if you want to have a good model that's comparable to a human being for research, you're going to have a very complex brain organoid, or at least as close to human complexity as you can get. Organoids can be a stand-in for human beings when it comes to research, and yes, they can also be used for computation. In either case, you want it to be as close to an adult brain as possible. Astrocytes are human cells that are involved in the structural stability, development, and maintenance of the human nervous system. Enriching brain organoids with astrocytes could make them more structurally sound and develop more completely, and that seems to be the case, but it is really the case when they listen to a heartbeat. Astrocytes alone did lead to more structural complexity and more activity on behalf of the brain organoids, but with astrocytes and a heartbeat, they really did. And you can see the difference between the control and the heartbeat model in terms of how active they were. And these were not organoids that were trained to do anything. This is just the random firing of their neurons all on their own. Again, they have no way to perceive the heartbeat. This is just their development in the presence of it. Now, this does not indicate consciousness or intelligence. It does indicate that a heartbeat may be important to our fetal development. It would be interesting to see brain organoids compared from an animal that hatches in an egg, like, say, a bird to a mouse, and see if heartbeat is necessary. Now, one of the things that does bother me about this is that if we end up using biological neural networks, so brain organoids in servers, will we have to raise them with a heartbeat in order to make them the most efficient? And to be honest, if I have to sing a lullaby to the server rack, I am out. Now, if you know me and my content, I have been covering brain organoids for the last 2 years, and there have been some absolutely amazing advancements, and apparently, they will also survive transport if you mail them. That is actually really good news for researchers. We have seen an absolute explosion in this field, at least in mice and simian models, and that includes chimpanzees. They could be used to heal strokes. They could be an actual treatment in which they are transplanted into an injured region, and multiple research groups have found them effective for spinal injuries. So these guys are extraordinarily exciting. So the idea of trying to make them as complex and as human as possible so they can serve as good research subjects, but also as good treatments, it's not entirely spooky, even though it is kind of creepy. I will admit, though, the whole heartbeat thing really did get me this time. I don't just feign incredulousness for the camera. A lot of these papers actually do shock me. They are extraordinarily cool, though, but sometimes they make me want to stare at the ceiling. Give me time. I may be prepared to sing lullabies to the server rack. I do hope you've enjoyed this. I will keep you up to date. You have no choice. Follow for more.